Let's set up our notebooks for today. So at the top, we are on Learning Target 1.3. We're going to be writing equations for number sentences. So do me a favor, make sure that that's written at the top of the right and the left page of your notebook. If you need more time to write that down, pause the video now. Now let's go ahead and set up our warm-up section. This is going to be on the left side of our notebook. So we're going to put warm-up, we're going to skip a line, we're going to write those two equations and inequalities, or they're both equations actually, lucky you guys. And then you don't have to skip the exact number, but once you've done the warm-up, underneath of it, don't forget to write your solution in a number line. If you need more time to write those two equations down, pause the video now. Let's go ahead and look at the right side of our notebook. We are going to set up this first section. Now it is a lot. So underneath of that header, we're going to skip a line, and then we're going to write that equation, and then we're going to put the number 1, and then we're going to skip a line, put the number 2, and then skip 2 lines, and then you can draw this line all the way across, and then this equation is just a mirror of that, right? The equation, the 1, skip a line, the 2, skip 2 lines. Then write this equation, you'll have a 1, you'll skip 2 lines this time, put a 2, and then you'll skip 3 lines, and then you'll have this bottom line right here. And then this equation just mirrors what this one has, equation 1, skip 2, 2, skip 3. If you need more time to write that section down, go ahead and pause the video now. Today, we are writing equations from number sentences, and I know this is not really anybody's favorite thing. It's one of my least favorite things, but I'm gonna do my best to make it easier for us to understand, okay? So we are going to look at some equations, and we're gonna see if we can write sentences like the ones that you guys are going to see. So right here I have x plus 1 equals 2. So if I were to see that in a number sentence, I might see something like a number x plus 1 is 2. So you guys can see that x plus 1 equals 2 is the same thing as a number x plus 1 is 2. And there's a bunch of words down here in this space that show you some representations of all of these different parts of an equation in different ways. So every single equation always has a variable, it always has a symbol, either add, subtract, multiply, or divide, and then it always usually has, not usually, if it's an equation, it has an equal sign, okay? So let's look at another one. We have k divided by 4 equals 6. So I could just put a number k divided by 4 is 6, just like I did here, or I could look at some other ways that it might be written. So I know that k over 4, this is a fraction which represents division. So I can look at some of the options for division. So I could say a number k divided by 4, or I could say the number k split into 4 equal parts, because that represents division, or I could say the quotient of k and 4 is 6. So there's lots of options here. I like the split into equal parts, so I'm going to use that. And instead of a number like I used here, maybe I'll use a value. A value, k, split into 4 equal parts is 6. So there are 2 examples of equations that we could write. So now these are both one step, but we are going to be writing some 2-step equations too. So I want to look at some 2 steps. So I have 3x plus 1 equals 13. So the plus 1 equals 13 is really easy to write out. But the 3x, we need to know what's happening here. And when we have a number and a letter next to each other, that is multiplication. So when we're talking about the relationship between 3 and x, we're talking about the fact they're being multiplied together. So if I was looking at this one, I would want to look and see, I could say 3 times x, I could say 3 multiplied by x, I could say the product of 3 and x, I could say x increased by a factor of 3, I could say triple the number x. I can't use twice because that means times 2, and I can't use double because that means times 2 when we have 3 being multiplied here. So I kind of like the word product. So I'm going to say the product of 3 and x represents a variable, which is an unknown, a value, or a number. So we need to specify. So the product of 3 and an unknown value, and they use the variable x, so we have to specify. So we've got this so far, 3 times x. 3, the product of 3 and the unknown value x. And then what happens to those two things? We add 1. So we can look, we could say increased by, combined with, more than, sum, plus, added to together. I like increased by. Increased by 1 is 13. So we've written the number sentence for that. So now we have one more word equation here we're going to turn into a number sentence. And we call them number sentences because they are basically equations written in sentence form. So I have negative 4m minus 2 equals 7. So again, a number next to a letter is multiplication. So I'm going to look at my options for this. I already used product, so I could use times, multiplied by, increased by a factor of, triple, double, twice. This is a 4, so we can't use triple or double or twice. So we have these 4 options to choose from. I kind of like using the classic times. So I'm going to say negative 4 times the number, and we know the number is being represented by m, so we have to specify. So negative 4 times the number m, and then we have minus 2, so I have to say subtraction. We could say decreased by, less than, difference, fewer than. Okay, and now 2 of these are really tricky because if I were to use less than, I would need that to be in front. If I were to use fewer than, I would need it to be in front, because if I were to say, hey, I'm 2 years, like my age is 2 years less than yours, I need to know your age first, right? So I would need to know your age first before I could say less than. So I need to either use decreased by or difference. So I'm just going to use decreased by. Decreased by 2 is 7. Negative 4 times the number m decreased by 2 is 7. Negative 4 times m decreased by 2 is 7. So we can kind of follow that. So what I want you guys to do, we wrote 4 of these equations together, and I left a second space there. If you wanted to challenge yourself and see if you could write a number sentence that's different than the one we wrote using some of this information, go for it. I'm not requiring that of you, but if you want to challenge yourself and see how well you can do, that would be awesome. But other than that, if you don't need more time to write down, we're going to get started on example number 1. Let's set up the very last section of our right side page. We are going to be doing some writing here. So let's do this section. We've got variable, add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So make sure you have 5 separate columns. And then in each column, we have all of these different ways that we can say add, subtract, multiply, and divide, all the different ways and all the different word phrases that mean that thing. So if you need time to write these 5 columns down, pause the video now. If you're done writing these 5 columns down, go ahead and skip 2 lines and write your first example, example number 1. 10 times the number is 140. I put this box here because I'm going to put my equation there later. You don't have to have the box, but please skip 2 lines, write example number 2, skip 2 lines, write example number 3. If you need more time to write that down, please pause the video now. So it says 10 times a number is 140. So I want to analyze each part. So I know that 10 can be written as 10. I know that times is multiplication. I know a number represents a variable, and they don't tell me specifically what variable to use, so I get to pick. So I'm going to use the variable t is for 140, and I know is 140 is the solution, okay? So now what's tricky here is we can't just write 10 times t equals 140. We have to write it in equation form, and what's best is to always put your solution first. So I know it's going to equal 140, and now for me to show 10 times t, I'm going to show it like they're multiplied up here, a number next to a letter. So I'm going to lose that little symbol, and I'm just going to have 10t. Example number 2, it says the product of 6. So I know the product of means multiplication, and I know that 6 is 6. And a value t, they actually say a value, which is a variable, and they use the letter t. So unlike up here, I shouldn't have used t, I should have used something different. So a number was we picked t. They say a value t, so they specify that we have to use t. Okay? And then it says is 36. Is 36. So again, we can't just write these in order. We have to look at our final. So it's easier to start with the solution. We know it's going to equal 36.
and I'm talking about multiplying. I'm talking about the product. I'm trying to multiply 6 and t. And just like up here, a letter next to a number, 6t equals 36. Okay, let's look at our last one. 5 multiplied by a number. So we know 5 is 5. We know multiplied is multiplied. And we know a number. In this case, again, they give me what that unknown variable is. A number is a variable, and they tell me to use x. So they say 5 multiplied by a number, x. And then they say decreased by, which is subtraction. Then they write 12. And then they say is 3. So 5 multiplied by a number, x, decreased by 12 is 3. But we've broken it down to make a lot of sense. 5 times x, again, a letter next to a number. We write like that. And then it says decreased by 12 minus 12 is 3. So we've written our equations. Now, if you can take the number sentence and create the equation, going from this to this is a 7. So if you could do this step, you would get a 70% on this section of our knowledge check, okay? But if you wanted to get a 9, what you could do is you could take this equation and you could solve it. So if I want to solve for t, I would divide by 10, cancel my 10s, t would equal 14. 140 divided by 10 is 14. Now this right here, if I could find this information, so turning the number sentence into an equation, that's a 7. Solving the equation, that's an 8. Now we have to rewrite what we know. The number is 14. I know it seems silly to write it in sentence form, but that's what we wanted to find. We wanted to find the number, and we found that the number is 14. So writing the equation is a 7. Solving it is an 8. Writing it in sentence form, solving in context is what that's called, is a 9. So this would be an A. If you could do all of these steps, that would be an A. So if we did the next one, turning the number sentence into an equation, that's a 7. Solving it, that's an 8. And then they said in this one, a value. So we would say the value is 6. That's a 9. So for the last one, I've got add 12 to both sides. 12s would cancel. My 5x drops down. 3 plus 12 is 15. And then I would divide by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So this step is a 7. This step is an 8. And then they said a number, so I would have to say the number is 3. That's the 9. Okay, if you guys would now try these next 4 problems on your own in this space. Actually, there might be 5. Sorry if there's 5 and I said 4. Okay, and there's also a challenge problem on there. Again, that one is not required. I put challenge here so you wouldn't forget. But if you want to try it and see if you can advance your thinking, there is a challenge problem for that section. Pause the video now to try these problems on your own. Return to the video when you're ready to check your answers.